Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I've got a Harbor Freight review of these two different angle grinders, and they're both 4.5 inch angle grinders, and they both have the paddle switches. So let's get into these. All right, so I've been doing a bunch of welding, and with a bunch of welding comes a bunch of grinding, or at least for me it does. Luckily, more of my grinding has been before the welds than after the welds here lately. Okay, on these angle grinders, I wanted the paddle switches. Harbor Freight has the Bauer line, and this is a 4.5 inch angle grinder with the paddle switch, and that was my main criteria. I wanted the paddle switch. So this one is an 8 amp, 11,500 RPM. It says 60% more power, but I don't know 60% more than what. So the big thing with this one is it has a regular price of $44.99. And right now it's on sale for $37.99, which is 15% off. And you can always find these at anywhere between 15 to 20% off pretty much. Then we also have the Hercules, and it's also a 4.5 inch, but it's an 11 amp paddle switch small angle grinder. And again, it has the 11 amp motor. It doesn't say 60% more power or anything, but obviously with 3 more amps than the Bauer, it's going to have a little more power. Okay, and this one, again, has the paddle switch, was my main criteria, but it is the Hercules. Its regular price is $69.99. And again, I found this one with a 20% off coupon. In the specifications on this grinder, it says the total weight of this is 5 pounds. So if we compare that to the Bauer, it says the total weight of this one is 4 pounds. And I'll tell you what, you don't notice a lot of difference in between the two of them. And I think the main reason for that, this one does definitely weigh a pound more, but it is a little bit better balanced, it seems like to me anyway, using it. So neither one of these grinders is brand new. I've had both of them for about a month. And like I said, I've been welding and grinding them pretty much every day out here. And what I found is the Hercules has both a little bit better balance to it. The paddle switch, I don't have any problems releasing this safety on it, but maybe that's because I've used it for more hours. But what I found is I generally reach for this Hercules before I reach for the Bauer. And that's not a big deal. Here's that paddle switch on the Bauer. Again, just not quite as smooth as the Hercules one, but it definitely works. So let's look at the similarities between these. If you pull the paddle switch, if you don't want it on and go off, if you let go of it or if you drop it, which that's why I want the paddle switch, because I do want that to go off. But if you wanted to lock this, there's a button there you can push, and now it'll stay on until you pull the paddle switch again to release it. And the Bauer is identical. Both of them have a push button to stop the blade so that you can take the nut off the bottom and change those blades. And they both look pretty much the same. They both came with a wrench that looked almost identical to be able to change that nut. So that's pretty much the same. Both of them have a handle to be able to hold on with your other hand. However, this Hercules one has just a little bit of like a rubber grip surface, and I couldn't find any place where it said that, but that kind of helps with the vibration a little bit. So the Bauer one has just basically a plastic grip, and it works. Like I said, if you're going to do small projects and stuff, the vibration probably won't affect you, but this one does have a little bit of rubber in it, which would attenuate that vibration some. The bodies on these are almost identical, but the Bauer's a little bit fatter than the Hercules, which I thought was kind of weird because this one has a bigger motor in it. Okay, so we've got our little caliper and we've got it zeroed out on the inch scale. Probably should use the millimeters for these tools. Okay, so that says it's 2.383 inches. And then on the Hercules, that's probably about a 1/4 inch difference. So let's go down to that, and that's 2.223. And like I said, 2.223 doesn't fit over the Bauer. So it's not a huge difference, but it is something that you will feel, or that I felt anyway, using the Bauer. And for me, it's just easier to grip the little bit narrower Hercules than it was to grip the fatter Bauer. Now then, again, looking at the Hercules case though, it's smaller, but that's just hard plastic. There's no rubberized anything on that except for the paddle switch. The paddle switch is just a plastic piece, and it feels a little softer than the rest of that hard plastic. So the Bauer though has the exact same paddle switch. I don't know why that safety feels harder to use on the Bauer, but it does. It might just be because of the fatter tool. It's just not as easy to grip and then operate that safety. But this portion of the Bauer tool and the bottom side here, this is a rubberized portion of the body of this tool, and no doubt that would help the vibration a little bit. So anything that's a cushion will help in the vibration, and you can hold that by just holding it further back. So the Bauer body, it's not quite as good for me because it is fatter, but it's a little bit better because there's a little bit of cushioning on that. So this is thinner, easier to grip, but there is no cushioning here. But the Bauer has an 11,500 RPM rating on it, and it has 8 amps. So it's not quite as much electricity flowing through it, but it gets a little bit more RPMs, 500 more to be precise. Where the Hercules has an 11 amp motor on it, but it only spins at 11,000 RPM. So it's a little bit slower, but it has more power. And again, I didn't notice that at all while operating these. The last thing we'll look at is the power cords on these. Okay, so the Bauer has an 18 wire gauge cord on it. The Hercules power cord, I can't find any writing on it whatsoever, but if you hold these next to each other, the Hercules cord is considerably larger than the Bauer. So I think this one is probably a 16 gauge cord. The other place you notice a difference is on the end that plugs into the wall. The plug on the Hercules is just a little bit beefier. Okay, so here are those power cords, and obviously they both plug into the exact same outlet. But the Bauer cord is just a little bit smaller. This Hercules one is a little bit beefier. And again, I believe it's a heavier wire gauge. Just found another difference. Tracing the cords back, the Hercules' cord is about 2 foot longer than the Bauer, but they're both plenty long. I'd say this is at least a 10-foot cord on the Hercules, so about an 8-foot cord on the Bauer. I think that's plenty. Okay, one other thing that I'll show is these guards on both of them can rotate to whatever position you want. The Bauer has this locking lever here to be able to then rotate that around, which is hard to do one-handed, but if you loosen that up, you can then spin this guard to whatever position you want it at, and then lock it back down. The Hercules has one that looks a little better, but is actually just a slightly bit harder to use because the lever's so short. You don't have the leverage. So if I want that right here, which I do, and then just lock it down. What I found is these are where they're at, and I never change them. But it is a difference. So the regular prices of these, the Hercules is $20 more, but so far, looking at the specs and looking at the tools themselves, I don't really see anything that would show where there's a $20 difference. But let's get using them. Okay, and what I've been doing is grinding down these small 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch plates that we've been building these frames out of. And if you're gonna do any grinding, definitely throw on some hearing protection and some face protection. Well, let's try out this Bauer. So that does a nice job. Like I said, you know, a lot of that's a grinding wheel, but that Bauer works really good. So let's check out the Hercules. Okay, so the Hercules, again, this is the one that I've been using the most. Okay, and the Hercules also does a great job. And using those back to back, I think I just saw why I prefer the Hercules. This one just feels a little smoother in the hand. It definitely has power. Both of them have power. Both of them will do the job. But this one just feels a little more, I don't know, like more of a professional tool. It's definitely smoother. Another thing that I was never subject to myself was like any kind of vibration injury. And, you know, these little grinders like this, they can definitely give you a vibration injury. And if you've never had that, it's actually nerve damage to your hands from holding a vibrating tool. Well, vibration injury is no joke. I was out here running these grinders, and I'd say probably 3 or 4 hours straight one night doing a bunch of these frames. And at the end of it, from my fingertips to my elbow was numb on both hands. And that was no fun. And that stayed that way for several hours. And then when I came out the next day to run the grinder, I decided I was not going to run it for more than an hour straight without taking a break. And what I found out was, man, after just a few minutes of running the grinder, that vibration returned. So it does damage to your body, and you want to protect yourself from that. So how do you do that? All right, so I got these gloves off Amazon, and you know, the back of them is just kind of a cloth, kind of chintzy really. But look at this. This is an anti-vibration glove, and it's basically just got neoprene on it that goes between your tool, your hands, and that tool to minimize the vibration. And I'll tell you what, these things work. It takes a while to get used to working in them because they're so bulky. You know, I mean, that's quite a bit to your fingertip. But when you fire this up, which it does make it a little trickier to find like that, you know, double acting switch on this paddle switch, but you're definitely more isolated from that vibration in these gloves. So if you're going to use either one of these grinders for very long, I'd suggest limiting the amount of time that you do it. I'd say don't use it for more than an hour straight without taking a break. And then the other thing is, I mean, if you've got a lot of grinding to do, these anti-vibration gloves, I think they were 20 bucks. But they definitely helped me. The last thing I'll talk about on these angle grinders, because I really don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. So on your wheels and wire brushes and stuff, make sure you look at the RPM. This one has a max RPM of 12,500. So at the 11,500 of the Bauer, this one's good to go. What I found is if you put a wire wheel in a grinder that's not ready for it, it will throw the little wires out like missiles, and that can be quite painful. For example, on my DeWalt, I've got a little cup brush, and the max on it, see if you can see it, 8,500 RPM is the max rotation. Otherwise, these little wires start flinging out of there, and it can be a bad day in flat rock. So this particular DeWalt battery-powered grinder, it does a nice job. It's not a paddle, but it has a max RPM of 8,000 RPM, so it's safe to use with this little brush. And this does a nice job of polishing some metal up as well. That kind of brings up why I got these grinders and why I have 2 of them. I'm doing a lot of work with this Flux 125, little titanium flux welder. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave the Hercules set up as a grinder, and I'm gonna make this Bauer my wire wheel grinder, and that'll take the slag off that those titanium flux core welds. So that way I don't have to sit there and change between them and stuff. I'm gonna get a Y extension cord, leave them both plugged in, and I can grind, make my weld with my titanium Flux 125, and then grind off that flux with the Bauer. Okay, and here is the blade change on either one of these. So push the button down to lock the whatever wheel you've got on it, put your little wrench that comes with it on it, and spin it so it comes off. And the wrenches that come in these, the Bauer came with a chrome one, and this Hercules came with this black one, but they're the exact same size. The threads are the same, and so are the little nuts. So, like I said, that worked pretty good. Okay, and to put this wheel on, you also have to get rid of this spacer here for the grinding wheel. Then it's just a matter of threading it on. This is a big reason why I bought both the Bauer and the Hercules. If I want to grind, I grab blue. If I want a wire wheel, I grab red. You know, it's pretty simple, but it works for me. Check out this Bosch paddle grinder. And so maybe the advantage it has over the Harbor Freight ones is its paddle switch is this whole length. So it just gives you more options of where you hold on to it. The reason I don't really like using this one is it weighs a lot more than either one of those Harbor Freight ones. It's a nice grinder. It's about the same amount of power as the Hercules, but like I said, it's heavy. So, and it's long too. The other thing though that it does have that's nice, this is a very nice anti-vibration handle. So this tool, it was $80. You can get them off Amazon, but you pay a little more. I don't think you really get a lot more other than maybe a little bit more convenient of a paddle switch and definitely a nice anti-vibration handle. All right, well, that's our review of these Harbor Freight angle grinders. And whether you choose this Bauer angle grinder for $44.99 regular price, or this Hercules angle grinder that's regular price $69.99. And keep in mind, you can get these pretty much any time between 15 and 20% off. But whichever one you choose, we hope you like it. I honestly feel like this Hercules is maybe just made just a little bit better. It feels a little more powerful and a little smoother, but honestly, when you're done grinding, you can't tell which one was made by which. So I guess longevity will be the key if this one lasts, you know, twice as long as this one. But so far we've used them, almost every day for like a month, and we haven't had any issues with them whatsoever. As always, your mileage may vary. If you like this content, give us a thumbs up. It absolutely helps the channel. And we invite you to subscribe to see more. Have a great day and be safe.